Hey, I hope everyone's doing well. Today I'm going to show you how I edit one of my photos in Photoshop. So it already set some presets that I designed. It will give me a basic look. This is the before, and this is what I did in Lightroom. It's not that much of a change, but it's just enough so I can bring this into Photoshop and really do some magic on it. So let's bring this photo into Photoshop and start working. Okay, we have our photo in Photoshop. First thing I do is I add adjustment layers. These are just overall effects. I do this pretty much for all of my photos. And you'll see it's just to bring out some color into it and also some contrast in the photo. So I go to my levels first. I usually start with the midtones. And most of the time I actually go up on it. But with this photo, I'm going to bring it down. And I'm just going to leave it right about there. I don't really feel I have to do anything with the shadows or the highlights. I'm pretty happy with where they are, and I'll do a little more of that in the dodge and burn, but at times I will kind of bring some more black into it. In fact, just a little bit right there is actually pretty good. I'll leave it there. So the next thing I do is I go to my vibrance and I will add some of that. I very rarely touch saturation. I just feel that it's too much and it makes the photos just look unreal. And the next thing I go to is my selective color. And here with my color spectrum, and on this one it's red, within that color spectrum I can bring out my CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I am going to bring out a little bit of red. I want these rocks to kind of really come out. And I'm going to add some yellow into that as well. Then I will go into the yellows. I'm going to pop my yellows just a little bit. I got to be careful of the trees. We don't want to add too much yellow into it. I'm going to go into the cyans. Actually, let me go into the greens. I'm going to bring the magenta all the way down and bring the cyan up. That's going to really make these green tones in here pop. Okay, in the cyan, the sky is very, very light. If it was a darker sky, I would use less on my slider, but since it's so light, I really want to bring out that color, so I'm going to bring that to 100% and bring my black up to 100%. You can see it did not make much of a difference, but for right now, that is good enough. And then we're going to go into the blues, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring my cyans all the way up. You can see what it did. It really kind of brought out a lot of that cyan, and then I'm going to bring up my black just to make it darker. It might be a little too much. I'll bring this down a little bit. Right about there. That looks good. So I'm going to skip my magenta. I'm going to go into my whites. Now in your whites, I normally take the black and I bring it up, and you can see what it did. It doesn't really affect much in here because there's not a lot of white going on, but that sky is so bright that it will end up affecting those highlight areas, and you can just see that beautiful contrast. In the neutrals, let me see, I'm going to bring up the black a little bit, not too much. I don't do too much in that neutral. And in the black, let's see if I can really kind of, no, that's too much. I'm going to bring this down a little bit, right about there. So just adding these three adjustments, let's look at the before and after. So that's where we started, and that's where we're at. So you can see just adding adjustments really makes a huge and beautiful difference. I'm going to flatten this down. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some sharpening. Now you can go in here, you can go to the sharpen and do a smart sharpen or unsharp mask. I know a lot of photographers that will do this method. I created my own sharpening action, and when I run it, it's just going to add a little bit of extra sharpening to it, really without adding noise, which I love. If you add too much sharpness to your photos, they don't look real, first of all, and it'll add a lot of noise, and it'll give you some weird edges as well, especially in print. Alright, so we're going to flatten that down. Next we're going to go to dodge and burn. This is a script I wrote. I've written this several times that I've made changes, some based on my own personal preferences and some based on what I've seen other incredible photographers do. And basically what it does is you'll get these 4 layers here, and you can see they're named extreme high, high, low, and very low. And they are curves, and these curves will affect the image once we start brushing in this mask here. Now if I turn the mask off, you'll see what it does. It's added a really dark curve to it. We just want to brush in some of this effect into the image. Now, when we're on our mask, you can see it's black. Black means none of it is showing, where when you add in white, white will make it show through. So if on my brush tool, I'm going to select a soft brush, and I'm going to make sure I'm white. I'm just going to show you at 100% what this will do, so you can see it's bringing out that effect into the image. Now, of course, that is way too much. So I changed my opacity to 10. I'm going to get a brush, and I'm just going to start brushing in those shadow areas. Now you'll notice that this script also made the image black and white. This is because the eye sees shadow and light better in black and white than it does with color. So I'm able to really see these little shadow areas in the trees, and all I'm doing is just really touching them up, making those shadows a little more prominent. I'm going to go into this rock, and I'm going to just start hitting these shadows. Okay, I like that. A little more up in here. I want the sky to be a little darker, so I'm going to add that. Okay, now that I have painted some areas with 10% of this curve, we're going to go to the high, and I'll show you what that looks like. You can see the curve is more in the highlighted areas. With this layer mask turned off, we can see the effect that it does. So again, black will hide, white will show. I'm going to make sure that I'm on white. Opacity of that brush is 10%. Make sure it's a soft brush, and I'm going to start to paint in the highlight areas. Anywhere that I see those highlights. Gonna hit some of these trees. See a little sun hitting those edges right there. That's pretty. Hitting these trees here. Just hitting the left side of these trees. Beautiful. Okay, so once I'm done with the high and the low, this is when I go to this black and white layer, and I will just completely delete it. Now I'm in color, and we can see the difference that I've made already, just with a little bit of dodge and burn within that high and low area. Now I'm going to go to the very low. This is an extreme low. If I turn this off, we can see what it does. It's very dark. So again, I make sure that I'm at 10%. Sometimes I'll even go to 5%. And I'm going to use a bigger brush, and I'm just going to kind of tap a little bit in the darker areas just to make them stand out a little bit more. So you have like different gradients of shadows in here. Just a couple in here. Alright, I'm going to touch a couple areas in here, not too much. Just some areas where it's a little bit darker, and like right over on this edge. It's pretty. So you notice I'm not hitting every little area that has shadow. I'm just hitting some areas, so there's different gradients of shadow. Okay, now I'm going to go to the extreme high, and I'm going to do the same thing, but in the highlights of the image. Now remember, my brush is 10%, so I'm only adding in 10% of that curve. Now, if you brush in an area of 10% and then you brush in that area again, you're going to add 20%. If you brush in again, it's 30%. So if you hit an area and you're not getting enough of that effect, just brush over it a couple more times. I tend to do that instead of changing the opacity. That way I can really get it exactly where I want it to be, and it may take a little more time, but that is what works for me. Okay, I'm going to hit these trees a little bit in here. Just trying to hit where the light is hitting, and I'm using a very small brush. Just add in just small areas of extreme highlight. So let's see the before and after. And to do that, I have all of these effects in a group. We can turn that entire group on and off, and we can see what we've done. And I like how that looks. I think I want the sky to be a little darker. I'm going to try it. So I'm going to get a big brush, be on the very low mask, 10%, and I'm just going to kind of bring that sky out a little bit. I can go to my history and see what I did. Yeah, I like that. Perfect. You not only can turn the entire group on and off, but you can turn on these individual layers on and off to see exactly what you've done. So I'm going to flatten this out. And in this tool right here, you have your dodge and burn tool, which is what we did. This is just destructive, where what we did is non-destructive. But you have your sponge tool. I'm going to change my saturation to about maybe 12 is fine, 10 is fine. And I'm just going to saturate the rock a little more. I want to bring out those oranges and reds and yellows. So I'm just going to saturate just the rock, just to make it stand out. Alright, I'm liking this. I'm not that happy with these little branches over here, so I'm going to use my stamp tool. That's going to be this tool right here. And I'm going to select this area here, and I'm just going to start stamping or brushing that out. Get this down, and then get that down there. Got a little area right there, and then we'll bring that up. So I think that looks much better. The last thing I do is I create another layer. So I'm going to fill it with black, and I'm going to change this to soft light. Some people do this to create a vignette, and I do at times, but most of the time I just add it to make the photo pop a little more. So I'm going to bring this up. Okay. So let's see what that does. You can see it just darkens it up a little more. Let's bring down to 18. And I like what's going on in the trees and the sky. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mask. Now again, white will show, black will hide. So I'm going to change my brush to black. I'm going to change my opacity to 100%. And I'm going to start brushing on the mountain. And what's that doing is it's masking this layer effect. And I'm just going to brush on that mountain. So with that off, you can see that it's dark. With it on, it lines it up. So now all that's being affected is the sky, the trees down here. So it's making the rock, which is my subject, really stand out. So I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to save it. It's going to bring it back into Lightroom. This is the before, and this is the after. So that's how I edit some of my scenic photography in Photoshop. If you want to purchase those actions, just go to my website. You'll see an area to purchase them, and I am given 50% off. And keep in mind, it's not the camera, it's the artist behind it. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you again soon.